a $5,000 first-class ticket, a black CEO dressed in a simple hoodie and jeans, and a gate agent who just made the worst, most expensive mistake of her entire career. Michael Thorne was told his seat, 1A, wasn't for him. He was publicly humiliated, accused of fraud, and threatened with arrest. The gate agent, Olivia Reynolds, smirked as she gave his seat away to another passenger. She didn't know that Michael Thorne didn't just fly on this airline. He owned it. And he had a satellite phone in his pocket. In exactly 28 minutes, every single plane in the Velocity Air fleet would be sitting on the tarmac. The hum of LAX's Terminal 4 was a familiar white noise to Michael Thorne. It was 8 p.m., and the terminal was a swirling vortex of hurried goodbyes, frustrated sighs, and the constant clicking roll of luggage wheels on tile. Michael, however, was an island of calm. He sat not in the plush, exclusive lounge his ticket afforded him, but on a standard, hard plastic chair opposite Gate 44B. His destination was JFK. The purpose? A 9:00 a.m. emergency meeting that would decide the fate of a $90 billion merger. To look at him, you wouldn't see a CEO. He wore a pair of dark wash jeans, a plain charcoal grey hoodie, and a pair of worn but clean white sneakers. His only concession to wealth was the simple, elegant black watch on his wrist, a Patek Philippe, but one so understated it was easily mistaken for a designer knockoff. At 42, Michael had built his green energy empire, Helios Sustainable, from a garage idea into a global powerhouse. He'd done it by being smarter, faster, and more resilient than everyone who underestimated him. And everyone underestimated him. He preferred it that way. He learned more about his companies by flying coach than he ever did in a boardroom. Tonight, however, was different. This wasn't one of his undercover boss trips. He was flying first class on Velocity Air Flight 212 because he needed to sleep. The red-eye was his only chance for rest before the biggest negotiation of his life. He checked his phone. His ticket was there, clear as day. Thorne, Michael, seat 1A. He watched the gate agents. There were two. A younger man, David, who seemed efficient and polite, and a woman in her late 50s, whose name tag read Olivia Reynolds. She was the gate supervisor, and she wore her authority like a heavy, ill-fitting coat. She barked at passengers, sighed dramatically at simple questions, and seemed to carry a personal storm cloud with her. Michael had already had one interaction with her. An hour ago, he'd approached the desk to ask if the flight was on time. "Excuse me, Miss Reynolds. Just confirming Flight 212 is still scheduled for a 9:15 departure." Olivia hadn't even looked up from her screen. "If the board says 9:15, it's 9:15. We don't change it for fun, sir. Please wait for the boarding announcement like everyone else." "Thank you," Michael had said, his voice perfectly even, and returned to his seat. He'd seen her type, her a bit too forceful pecking at the keys. He saw her glance at him, then at her screen, then back at him. A tiny, almost imperceptible frown line appeared between her brows. Michael knew that look. It was the look of cognitive dissonance, the look of someone whose internal biases were being challenged by a simple fact: a black man in a hoodie, sitting in the first-class priority area. He didn't fit her pre-packaged narrative of what Seat 1A should look like. At 8:45 p.m., Olivia's voice crackled over the PA system, dripping with manufactured politeness. "Good evening, ladies and gentlemen. We are now pleased to announce the pre-boarding of Velocity Air Flight 212 to New York, JFK. We invite our active military personnel and Anyone needing special assistance to board at this time. A few minutes passed. We now invite our first-class passengers to board through the priority lane. Michael stood, stretched lightly, and picked up his single carry-on bag. It was a sleek, unbranded black leather duffel. He joined the short line, standing behind a woman in a bright pink tracksuit. He saw Olivia lean over to her colleague David. She whispered something and shot a glance directly at Michael. David looked, flushed, and quickly looked back down at his monitor, suddenly fascinated by his own keyboard. Michael felt the familiar, tired weight of it. Here we go. The woman in the tracksuit was processed. Michael stepped forward. He pulled up the QR code for his boarding pass on his phone, the screen bright. "Good evening," he said, holding the phone out to the scanner. Olivia put her hand up, stopping him from placing it under the red light. "I'm sorry, sir. I'll need to see your physical boarding pass and your ID." Her voice was hard, not procedure hard, personal hard. "Certainly," Michael said. He was used to this. He kept his passport in his jacket pocket specifically for these moments. He handed her the dark blue booklet. Olivia took it, her fingers lingering on it. She popped it open, looking at his photo, then at his face, then back at the photo. She scanned the passport. "And your boarding pass?" "It's on my phone," he said, holding it up again. "We are having system issues," Olivia said, the lie thin and brittle. "I can't scan QR codes right now. I'll have to print you a new one. What was the name?" "Michael Thorne," he said, patiently. Olivia typed his name with 2 fingers, her eyes darting between the screen and his face. The suspicion was rolling off her in waves. "Michael Thorne." She stared at the screen for a long, uncomfortable 10 seconds. Michael could see the reflection in her glasses. His name was right there. Thorne, M-Seat 1A. Status confirmed. VIP. "Yes, sir," she said, her voice dropping to a low, conspiratorial and deeply insulting tone. "This ticket has been flagged by our system." Michael blinked. "Flagged? Flagged for what? I bought it this morning." "It's showing an irregularity," she said. "I'm not sure you're the actual passenger for this flight." Behind him, the first-class line was growing. A man in a tailored suit. "Chad," huffed impatiently. "Can we move it? Some of us have planes to catch." Olivia gave Chad a sympathetic smile, then turned back to Michael, her face hardening into a mask of bureaucratic indifference. "Sir, I'm going to have to ask you to step aside. I can't let you board at this time." A cold, quiet anger, the kind that sharpens the senses, began to build in Michael's chest. But on the outside, he remained a statue of calm. He had not built a multi-billion-dollar company by losing his cool in public. "Ma'am, let's be very clear," Michael said, his voice low and precise, not for her, but for the other passengers now staring. "My name is Michael Thorne. That is my passport. This is my boarding pass. My flight is at 9:15. I am in this line. What exactly is the irregularity?" Olivia seemed to draw strength from the audience. She puffed up, her customer service mask dropping away to reveal the raw, ugly judgment underneath. "Sir, this is a very expensive ticket," she said, as if this explained everything. "It was purchased this morning on a new credit card, and it was immediately flagged for a potential security review. It's my job to protect this airline from fraud." "Fraud," Michael repeated. The word hung in the air, heavy and toxic. The man in the suit, Chad, actually snickered. "Are you accusing me of fraud, Miss Reynolds?" Michael asked. I'm not accusing you of anything, sir. She spat, weaponizing the word. I'm stating that the system has flagged this ticket. It's very common. We've had a lot of problems with stolen identities and credit card scams lately. People buying last-minute first-class tickets they can't afford. The implication was a slap in the face. People like you. Call your ticketing office, Michael said. The card is an Onyx corporate card. The name on the card is Helios Sustainable. The name on the ticket is Michael Thorne. I am the CEO of that company. You can Google it. It will take you 10 seconds. This, apparently, was the wrong thing to say. Olivia's eyes narrowed into slits. Sir, I am not going to Google you, and I am not going to be intimidated. I have passengers, real passengers, waiting to board. She turned to her colleague. David, start boarding the rest of first class. I'll deal with this. David, looking terrified, nodded and started scanning the tickets of the people behind Michael. Chad pushed past, deliberately bumping Michael's shoulder. Finally, he muttered, handing his pass to David. Some people. Michael held his ground. You are not boarding them ahead of me, Miss Reynolds. I am the passenger in 1A. I am standing right here, and you are denying me boarding. You are causing a disturbance, she suddenly shouted, her voice rising in pitch. The entire gate area went silent. You are holding up an entire flight. I have told you to step aside. If you do not step aside right now, I will be forced to call airport security. Call them, Michael said, his voice flat. Call them right now. He did not raise his voice. He did not gesticulate. He simply stood there, a man being denied a service he had paid for, a man being publicly and professionally shamed for the crime of not looking the part. You asked for it, Olivia shrieked. She grabbed the radio from her belt. This is gate 44B. I have a 1031, a disruptive passenger at the gate. Yes, he's being belligerent. I need assistance immediately. Belligerent? Michael asked, genuinely bewildered. He hadn't moved a muscle. They'll be here in 2 minutes, Olivia said, crossing her arms, a smug, triumphant look on her face. You've done it now. You're going to miss your flight, and you're probably going to spend the night in an airport holding cell. Was it worth it? The other passengers watched, a mix of embarrassment, annoyance, and veiled racism. A few filmed with their phones. Michael knew this was exactly what she wanted. While she was talking, her eyes flicked to her screen. Michael saw it. A name. A passenger on the standby list. Wilkinson C. Chad. Olivia's eyes lit up. She had an idea. A cruel, vindictive idea. While Michael was being detained by the idea of security, she turned to the microphone. Paging passenger Chad Wilkinson. Mr. Wilkinson, please return to the gate desk. Chad, who had just been about to walk down the jet bridge, turned around, an annoyed look on his face. He stomped back. What? I'm already boarded. Mr. Wilkinson, Olivia said, loud enough for Michael and everyone else to hear. It seems we've had a last-minute seat change. Your upgraded seat has cleared. We're moving you from 3C to 1A. She printed a new ticket with a flourish. It seems our original passenger for 1A, she said, staring right at Michael, is unable to travel with us tonight. His ticket has been voided due to a security flag. So, congratulations. Enjoy the flatbed. Chad's face broke into a greedy smile. Well, all right. 1A. He snatched the ticket from her hand. Wait, Michael said, the first trace of steel entering his voice. You cannot give my seat away. That is theft. It's not your seat, sir, Olivia said, her smile poisonous. It's the airline seat, and we've given it to a paying customer. She looked past Michael's shoulder. Ah, here's security now. 2 uniformed Port Authority officers, a man and a woman, walked up. Officer Miller, the senior one, looked tired. "What's the problem here?" Miller asked, his hand resting on his belt. "This man," Olivia said, pointing at Michael. "He's refusing to leave the boarding area. His ticket is fraudulent, and he was causing a disturbance, threatening me." "I did no such thing," Michael said, turning to the officer. "Officer, my name is Michael Thorne. This is my passport. This is my valid, paid-for, first-class ticket for seat 1A. This gate agent, Miss Reynolds, has refused to scan it, accused me of fraud without evidence, and has just given my seat to another passenger. I am not being disruptive. I am being robbed." Officer Miller looked at Olivia. He'd seen this before. "Ma'am, did you scan his passport?" "Yes, it's flagged. He's a security risk." Olivia lied, her voice cracking with indignation. "Sir," Officer Miller said to Michael, his voice weary, "she's the gate agent. If she says you're a security risk, I can't let you on the plane. It's her call. I need you to step away from the gate. We can sort this out at the customer service desk." "Officer," Michael said, "that is not acceptable. I have a 9-figure deal resting on me being in New York in the morning. I am not moving." "Then you're giving me no choice," Miller said, unsnapping the catch on his radio. "No, wait," Michael said. He held up his hand. He looked at Olivia, her face a mask of victory. He looked at Chad, who was smirking from the jet bridge door, waiting to watch the show. He looked at the passengers filming him. "You're right," Michael said softly. "I'll step aside." Olivia's smile faltered. She hadn't expected him to capitulate so easily. Michael calmly picked up his duffel bag. He walked about 20 feet away, out of the immediate gate area, and sat down in the same hard plastic chair he'd been in before. He was no longer just a passenger. He was a problem. Olivia turned to Officer Miller. "See? He was just a bluff. Thank you, officer." She turned to the PA. "We are now commencing general boarding for Flight 212. She thought she had won. She had no idea what she had just done. Michael Thorne sat for a full minute, watching the herd of passengers file past the desk. Olivia Reynolds was scanning their tickets with a renewed, cheerful energy, basking in the glow of her perceived victory. Chad Wilkinson had long since disappeared down the jet bridge, settling into seat 1A, a seat that was not his. Michael watched the clock on the terminal wall. 8:57 p.m. He unzipped his duffel bag. He didn't pull out his top-of-the-line smartphone. He reached deeper, past a binder of meeting notes, and pulled out a plain, matte black device. It was a Thuraya satellite phone, stark, functional, and with a signal that worked when everything else failed. He powered it on. He had a single number on his speed dial, listed under DC. He pressed the button. It rang twice. "This had better be a $1 trillion problem, Michael, or I'm billing you for my sleep." The voice on the other end was sharp, awake, and belonged to David Chen, the Chief Operating Officer of Orion Holdings Group. "It might be, David. It might be," Michael said, his voice calm and quiet, a stark contrast to the chaos he was about to unleash. "What's the situation?" David asked, his voice instantly shifting to business. "I'm at LAX, gate 44B. I'm looking at Velocity Air Flight 212, which I am supposed to be on." "Supposed to be? What, is it delayed?" "No," Michael said. "I've just been denied boarding, publicly, accused of fraud, threatened with arrest, and had my confirmed 1A seat given to a standby passenger. The gate supervisor's name is Olivia Reynolds, She appears to have a severe allergy to black men in hoodies. There was a sharp intake of breath on the other end. Michael, are you serious? Has a heart attack, David. I'm sitting here watching my plane board without me. Did you tell them who you are? Michael let out a short, dry laugh. I was a little busy being labelled a security risk and a belligerent passenger. Besides, this little experiment just failed, spectacularly. David knew what experiment meant. 6 months ago, Orion Holdings Group, a massive, faceless private equity firm, had acquired Velocity Air. The airline was hemorrhaging money, and its reputation for customer service was in the gutter. Michael Thorne, CEO of Helios and a newly appointed secret weapon director on Orion's board, had been brought in to oversee the cleanup. He'd been given a blank check and a mandate: fix it or kill it. This trip was supposed to be his final incognito assessment before the 9 a.m. meeting where he would present his findings to the board. His recommendation was going to be a complete restructuring. Now, that had changed. "So," David said, the sound of typing clicking in the background, "what's the play? You want me to get the station manager down there? Fire this Olivia?" "No," Michael said. "That's thinking small, David. That's pulling one weed. The whole garden is rotten. I'm done assessing. It's time to act." "What are you saying?" Michael looked at the clock. 8:59 p.m. The last passenger was shuffling onto the jet bridge. "David, what's our current fleet status?" More typing. "We have 142 aircraft in the air, 38 on the ground, preparing for departure. 22 at gates, disembarking." "Ground them," Michael said. The silence on the other end of the phone was absolute. "Michael, ground them? Ground the whole airline? You can't be serious. The FAA will have our hides. We'll lose tens of millions of dollars per hour." "We're already losing millions," Michael said, his voice hard as ice. "We're losing it in reputation. We're losing it in liability. We're losing it by paying people like Olivia Reynolds to publicly humiliate our customers. I'm done. This isn't an airline. It's a lawsuit waiting to happen, and it just found its plaintiff. Me." He stood up, walking closer to the window, watching the ground crew laze around Flight 212. "But the logistics, the passengers, are my problem, which is why I'm fixing it. Initiate Code Sierra. Full fleet grounding, effective now. All Velocity aircraft, anywhere in the world, are to be immediately routed to the nearest available gate. No takeoffs. Full stop. I want every bird on the ground in the next 30 minutes. Issue a full systems and security audit memo to the FAA. Blame it on a critical failure in our global booking system, which," he added, "is not technically a lie, since the system just allowed a supervisor to steal a passenger's seat." "Jesus, Michael." David was typing furiously now. "Okay, Code Sierra. Are you sure? This is the red button." "I'm not sure, David," Michael said, turning to look back at Gate 44B. Olivia was laughing with Officer Miller, who was still lingering. "I'm certain." "And David?" "Yeah? Start the clock. I want to know exactly how long it takes from this call until that woman's smile disappears. Starting. Now." 9:02 p.m. Michael hung up. He put the satellite phone back in his bag. He sat back down. He watched the gate. 9:03 p.m. Olivia bid farewell to the officers. 9:05 p.m. She and David tidied up the desk. 9:07 p.m. The jet bridge operator began to pull the boarding tunnel away from the plane. Any second now, Michael thought. The phone at Olivia's desk rang. It was a shrill, internal-only line. She picked it up, her back to the gate. "Gate 44B, Reynolds." Michael watched. He couldn't hear her words, but he could see her posture. She stood up straight. Her free hand went to her headset. She turned to her computer. "What do you mean, all flights?" he imagined her saying. She started typing. Frantically, her face went from confused to annoyed to pale. 9:09 p.m. 7 minutes. She slammed the phone down. She grabbed her radio. "Flight 212, this is Gate 44B. Hold your position. Do not push back. I repeat, do not push back." She looked at her screen again, her face a mask of disbelief. A red banner had just appeared across the top. "Fleet-wide system alert. Code Sierra. All operations ceased. Awaiting executive instruction." She looked up, her eyes scanning the terminal, and locked directly onto Michael. Her victorious smirk was gone. In its place was the first dawning bloom of pure, unadulterated terror. The grounding of an entire airline is not a quiet event. It is a deafening, catastrophic failure, a multi-ton vehicle pile-up in slow motion. For Michael, sitting 20 feet away, it was a symphony of chaos, and he was its silent conductor. The first note was Olivia's panicked call to the jet bridge. The second was the pilot of Flight 212, Captain Evans, a 20-year veteran, sticking his head out of the cockpit door and yelling down the jet bridge, "What in the hell do you mean? Hold position!" The third, and most satisfying, was the sudden, terminal-wide cascade of noise. It started as a single, delayed status flipping on the board above Gate 44B. Then, like a virus, it spread. Gate 42, delayed. Gate 45, cancelled. Gate 46, delayed. Within 90 seconds, every single Velocity Air flight on the main concourse board had flipped from on time to a stark, ominous sea agent. And then, the phones. Hundreds of people in the terminal, all at once, received an alert. A collective groan, followed by a roar of angry, confused voices, erupted. Passengers from other gates, seeing their flights cancelled, began to swarm the nearest customer service desk, which happened to be Gate 44B. "What's going on?" a man in a cowboy hat yelled at Olivia. "My flight to Dallas just got cancelled. I have a connection." "Ma'am, the app says system error," another woman cried. "I have to get to a funeral." Olivia Reynolds was drowning. She was holding her headset, one hand on her keyboard, her face completely ashen. I don't have any information, sir. It's a system-wide outage. All flights are... They're what?" the man demanded. "They're grounded," David, the younger agent, whispered, his eyes wide with terror as he read the internal memo that had just popped up. All of them. Everywhere. In the world. The terminal descended into a full-blown meltdown. People were shouting. A woman started crying. The two Port Authority officers, Miller and his partner, came running back, their expressions shifting from routine to riot control. "What happened?" Officer Miller yelled at Olivia. "I don't know," she wailed, tears of frustration and panic welling in her eyes. "The system just stopped. Everything is grounded. They're saying it's a security audit." Through it all, Michael Thorne sat, watching. He felt a grim sense of finality. He had pulled the pin. Now, he had to handle the explosion. His regular smartphone buzzed, a text from David Chen. "DC, fleet is 40% on the ground. Air traffic control is unhappy. FAA is demanding answers. You're trending on Twitter. Wahonaham Velocity grounded." Michael ignored it. He stood up. He picked up his duffel bag and began to walk. Not away, but toward the chaos. He walked calmly, purposefully, parting the sea of angry passengers. They were all focused on Olivia, the symbolic head of the snake. He walked right up to the desk. Olivia, Officer Miller, and the panicked David were in a tight huddle. "Excuse me," Michael said, his voice calm, but projecting easily over the din. Olivia looked up. When she saw him, her panic was momentarily replaced by a flash of pure, unadulterated rage. "You!" she shrieked. "You're still here? I don't have time for this. Get him out of here, officer. He's probably what caused this. He's the security risk I warned you about." Officer Miller, to his credit, was now deeply skeptical. This one man in a hoodie had grounded an airline. He looked at Michael. "Sir, I told you, you need to leave this area." "I will, officer," Michael said. "But first, I need Ms. Reynolds to do something for me." "Do something for you?" Olivia laughed, a high, hysterical sound. "Are you insane? The entire airline is grounded, you fool. I can't even get you on a flight tomorrow. Now get out." "I don't want a flight," Michael said. He pulled out his satellite phone and placed it on the counter. "I want you to call your CEO." Olivia stared at the phone. "What? I can't just call the CEO." "You're right," Michael said. "He's busy. Call your head of North American operations, a man named, let's see, Tom Gaffner. Call him. On his private cell." Olivia's blood ran cold. No one at her level knew Tom Gaffner's private cell number. "How do you know that name?" "Call him," Michael insisted, his voice hardening. "Tell him Michael Thorne is at Gate 44B at LAX, and that Code Sierra is in full effect. And tell him that his gate supervisor, Olivia Reynolds, just gave my 1A seat to a standby passenger named Chad Wilkinson." The color drained from Olivia's face. She fumbled for her desk phone. She didn't have Gaffner's cell, but she had the Regional Operations Center. "This is Reynolds at LAX. I need a red line to Tom Gaffner. Yes, now. No, I don't care if he's in a meeting. Tell him it's about Code Sierra." She was put on hold. The entire terminal was now watching this personal bizarre drama unfold at the epicenter of the chaos. Michael checked his watch. 9:20 p.m. 18 minutes. Olivia's face went from pale to ghostly white. She was listening to the phone, her hand shaking. Yes, sir. Mr. Gaffner. I understand. Yes, he's here. Yes, his name is Michael Thorne." She looked at Michael, and for the first time, he saw not just panic, but a deep, existential dread. The kind of dread you feel when you realize you haven't just made a mistake, you've made a career-ending, life-altering mistake. He wants to speak to you," she whispered, holding the phone out to Michael, her hand trembling so badly she could barely hold it. Michael didn't take it. "Tell him I'm busy," Michael said, looking her dead in the eye. "Tell him his entire executive team is fired, and tell him to get Captain Evans and the passenger in 1A off my plane. Right now." The jet bridge was still attached to the aircraft. Olivia, moving like a shell-shocked automaton, relayed Michael's message into the phone. "Sir, he says you're fired, and he wants the captain and the passenger in 1A off the plane." A torrent of apoplectic shouting erupted from the receiver, so loud that even Officer Miller could hear it. Olivia flinched. "Just do it," Michael said, his voice quiet. He turned to Officer Miller. "Officer, you might want to have your partner meet the passenger from 1A. He's about to be deplanned, and he won't be happy about it." Officer Miller, his face a complex mask of confusion and dawning realization, nodded and spoke into his radio. A moment later, the jet bridge door opened. Captain Evans, the pilot, emerged, his face dark as a thundercloud. He was a tall man with silver hair and a chest full of medals, and he was furious. "What in the hell is going on, Olivia?" he boomed. "My screens are lit up like a Christmas tree with no departure orders. I've got a plane load of 200 angry people, and my union rep is already blowing up my phone. This is your gate. What did you do?" Olivia just pointed a trembling finger at Michael. Captain Evans turned, his eyes sweeping over Michael's hoodie and jeans with undisguised contempt. "Who's this? This is what all this is about. You grounded my flight. You grounded the fleet. For this kid." Michael stepped forward. "Captain Evans, my name is Michael Thorne. I was the passenger booked in 1A. Your gate agent, Miss Reynolds, refused my boarding, accused me of fraud, and gave my seat to Mr. Wilkinson." "And?" the captain shot back. "So you threw a tantrum and called in a bomb threat. Is that it? You know how much trouble you're in, son?" "No, Captain," Michael said. He reached into his jacket pocket and pulled out a slim leather wallet. He didn't show a driver's license. He showed a black, metal-core business card. He handed it to the pilot. Captain Evans looked at it. His eyes read the name, then the title. He read it again, his brain refusing to process it. Michael Thorne. Chief Executive Officer, Orion Holdings Group. The pilot's face, which had been bright red with anger, turned a chalky, splotchy white. His mouth opened, but no sound came out. "Orion. Holdings?" he finally stammered. The new owners." "The owners," Michael corrected him, his voice still level. "Velocity Air is one of our underperforming assets. An asset I was flown in to personally inspect before a 9:00 a.m. board meeting tomorrow. A meeting where I was supposed to recommend a restructuring. But your gate supervisor, Ms. Reynolds, just rewrote my entire presentation." He turned his gaze to Olivia. She looked like she was going to be physically ill. "I'm not a security risk, Ms. Reynolds. I'm not fraud. I'm your new boss. Or, well," he glanced at his watch. "I was, for the last 6 months, incognito." Just then, the second officer emerged from the jet bridge, practically dragging Chad Wilkinson by the arm. Chad was red-faced and yelling, "Get your hands off me! I'm a first-class passenger! This is assault! I'm going to sue!" He stumbled out into the gate area and saw the crowd. He saw Olivia, the pilot, and Michael. "What is this?" he demanded. "I was in my seat. 1A. "Mr. Wilkinson," Michael said, "thank you for beta testing my seat. Your trial period has expired. You were a party to the theft of a ticketed passenger's seat. You'll be refunded for your original coach ticket. Security will now escort you from the terminal. You're banned from Velocity Air. For life." "You can't do that," Chad sputtered. "He can," Captain Evans said, his voice a low gravel. He had found his tongue, and it was now dripping with professional terror. He really can." "Sir," he said, turning to Michael. "Mr. Thorne, I had no idea. On behalf of the crew, You did nothing, Captain," Michael cut him off. "You were in your cockpit, where you were supposed to be. Your gate staff, however, is another story." All eyes turned to Olivia. She was backed against the counter, her entire world collapsing, broadcast live on a dozen smartphones. I was just following procedure," she whispered, the lie pathetic and weak. "Procedure?" Michael's voice finally rose, just a little, laced with a cold fury that was more terrifying than any shout. Was it procedure to accuse me of fraud? Was it procedure to see a black man in a hoodie and assume he couldn't possibly belong in 1A? Was it procedure to lie to a police officer, telling him I was belligerent when I never raised my voice? Was it procedure to steal my seat and give it to him as a little treat? He stepped closer. You weren't following procedure, Olivia. You were following your prejudice. And you just cost this company over $100 million as a start. You're the most expensive employee Velocity Air has ever had. Congratulations. Michael turned to the stunned crowd. Ladies and gentlemen, he said, his voice projecting through the terminal. My name is Michael Thorne. I am the CEO of the company that owns Velocity Air. A collective gasp went up. The phones were all pointed at him now. What you have just witnessed is a symptom of a corporate culture that is broken, a culture that I am here to fix, starting tonight. He looked at the pilot. Captain, your flight is cancelled. So is every other flight on this board. But I am going to New York. I want a new crew, a new gate agent, and this plane cleaned and refueled. I'll be leaving in 1 hour. He looked at Officer Miller. Officer, thank you for your time. I believe you'll need to escort Ms. Reynolds and Mr. Wilkinson from the premises. Ms. Reynolds is no longer an employee. Her access is revoked. He checked his watch. 9:30 p.m. 28 minutes, he said to himself. From denial to grounding. He turned, picked up his bag, and walked past the speechless Olivia Reynolds, past the horrified Captain Evans, and strode down the now empty jet bridge. He walked onto the plane, into the first-class cabin, and finally stood in front of seat 1A. He sat down, and for the first time that night, he let out a long, slow breath. The cleanup had begun. The interior of the 767 was silent, a stark contrast to the pandemonium Michael had just left in the terminal. He was alone, save for a few confused flight attendants who were huddled in the galley, whispering frantically. They had seen the passenger from 1A ejected. They had seen the captain's face. They knew this was not a standard delay. Michael pulled out his satellite phone again and redialed David Chen. Tell me you're not sitting in an airport jail, David said, his voice ragged with stress. I'm sitting in seat 1A, flight 212, Michael replied, leaning his head back against the headrest. The plane is empty. How's the fallout? Fallout? Michael, this isn't fallout. This is a nuclear winter. The FAA is screaming. The DOT is screaming. Our own board is screaming. Our stock is projected to open down 40%. Good, Michael said. Let it burn. We'll rebuild from the ashes. Send the memo. The full board memo. No, Michael said. The Olivia Reynolds memo. I want every single employee at this company, from the baggage handlers to the VPs, to get an alert. Effective immediately, Olivia Reynolds, employee ID 7049, has been terminated with cause. Michael, we can't. The liability. We can't name her. We're not. The memo will state, an employee, after engaging in discriminatory behavior, accusing a ticketed passenger of fraud based on their appearance, and violating federal airline protocols by giving away a confirmed, paid-for seat, has been terminated. This action resulted in a fleet-wide grounding for a full security and systems audit. Velocity Air has a zero-tolerance policy for discrimination in any form. We will be better. We will do better. The audit starts now. Jesus, David breathed. That's a message. It's a promise. Now, about the passengers. I want every single passenger who was booked on a Velocity Air flight tonight, anywhere in the world, to be fully refunded. Not a voucher. A full cash refund, plus a $1,000 credit for their trouble. Book them on our competitors. Pay for it. Pay for their hotels. Pay for their meals. I want this to be the most expensive mistake one gate agent has ever made. That's catastrophic. It's the cost of business, David. The cost of fixing a cancer. Do it. Michael hung up. He looked out the window. Back in the terminal, he could see the scene. Olivia Reynolds was being led away, not in handcuffs, but by two grim-faced airport managers. She was crying, a messy, ugly cry of someone who had never faced a real consequence. Chad Wilkinson was yelling at Officer Miller's partner, jabbing his finger, and was being calmly but firmly directed toward the exit. The crowd of passengers was still there, but their anger was now mixed with a sense of awe. They had just witnessed a corporate execution. A new crew, looking nervous and incredibly professional, walked down the jet bridge. A new pilot, a woman, stopped at the entrance to 1A. "Mr. Thorne," she asked, her voice crisp. "Captain Sarah Jenkins, your new flight crew. We've been pulled from the JFK London route. We're fueled, we're pre-flighted. We can be in the air in 20 minutes. "Thank you, Captain," Michael said, giving her a small, tired smile. "I appreciate you." "We read the memo, sir," she said, her expression unreadable. "It's all over the internal network. No one has ever seen anything like it." "Get used to it, Captain," Michael said. "Things are changing at Velocity Air, starting tonight." She nodded, a flicker of something respect in her eyes. "Welcome aboard, sir." Back in the terminal, the calmer storm was just beginning. Olivia Reynolds, stripped of her badge, was sobbing at the customer service desk, trying to find out how to get home, if she still had a pension. The younger agent, David, the one who had looked ashamed, walked up to her. He didn't look triumphant. He just looked sad. They just fired Tom Gaffner," he whispered, "the head of ops, and his boss, and the VP of customer experience. They're cleaning house on a live-streamed, company-wide call." Olivia's crying stopped. She just stared at him, her mouth open, the full scope of what her petty, small-minded power play had wrought finally dawning on her. She hadn't just lost her job. She had decapitated the entire division. She was no longer just Olivia Reynolds, cranky gate agent. She was a verb. She was the new cautionary tale. She was the reason a 30-year-old airline was currently in freefall. The news had already broken. A passenger's video, the one of Olivia screaming, "Fraud," had hit TikTok, cross-referenced with a video of Michael's "I'm the CEO" speech. It had millions of views. The hashtags Wireless Velocity, Grounded, Wahan's Black CEO, and Wahan's by Olivia were trending worldwide. Olivia Reynolds picked up her bag. She walked out of the terminal, not as an employee, but as a pariah. She was met with a sea of glares. The passengers she had stranded, the co-workers she had embarrassed, the entire airport seemed to be staring at her. The woman who broke an airline. It was a long, cold, silent walk of shame, all the way to the employee parking lot, where her keycard, she would soon find, no longer worked. The fallout was immediate and brutal, as Flight 212, now redesignated as Executive Charter 001, taxied to the runway. Michael's phone lit up. It was the real reason he was flying, the 9 a.m. merger meeting. He answered. Arthur Donovan, the 80-year-old patriarch of the firm Michael was supposed to be merging with, was on the line. "Michael, what in God's name is happening? My news feed just exploded. It says you grounded an airline. Our merger is based on your stability. This is chaos." "Arthur," Michael said, as the 767's engines roared to life, "you're right. It is chaos. It's also the best damn PR for this merger I could have ever asked for." "What? Are you mad? You've lit $100 billion company on fire." "I lit a cancer on fire, Arthur," Michael said. "Our merger isn't about stability. It's about strength. It's about a new way of doing business. You were worried that my green company was too soft. I just showed you, and the entire world, what my zero-tolerance policy looks like in practice. I just showed them what happens when someone messes with my people or my principles." He looked out the window as the plane lifted off, soaring over the sprawl of Los Angeles. "The stock will tank tomorrow," Michael continued. "I'll buy it back, all of it. At a discount. This grounding, this public execution. This is the cheapest rebranding in history. We're not Velocity Air, the cheap, rude airline, anymore. As of tomorrow, we are the airline whose new CEO grounded the entire fleet because a gate agent was racist to a customer." There was a long pause on the line. "My God, son," Arthur finally said, a new deep respect in his voice. "You're a damn pirate. I love it. The deal is on, and I want an extra 10% of your new airline." "You'll get 5, Michael said, and hung up. The cost of prejudice for Olivia Reynolds was her career, her reputation, and her entire sense of self. She would be unemployable in the airline industry for life. Her name was now synonymous with the biggest corporate self-own of the decade. She had picked a fight with a quiet man in a hoodie, and he had responded by dropping a financial bomb on her entire world. The cost for Chad Wilkinson was simpler. He was a mid-level sales manager for a paper company. When the videos went viral, his boss saw them. He saw his employee smirking as another man was humiliated, and then saw him yelling at police officers after being caught. He was fired by email before Michael's plane even reached cruising altitude. "Not a good look for the brand, Chad," the email read. The cost for Velocity Air was steep, $400 million in immediate losses from the grounding, a stock price that was temporarily cut in half, a complete and total executive turnover. But the cost for Michael Thorne? He had a sleepless 6-hour flight to New York. He had to run a multi-billion-dollar merger on 2 hours of sleep, and he had to rebuild an entire airline from the ground up. As the plane leveled off at 35,000 feet, a flight attendant approached him. "Mr. Thorne, Captain Jenkins asked me to give you this. She said you never got your pre-departure drink." She handed him a glass of sparkling water with a lime. "Answer," she said, her voice soft. "On behalf of, well, me. I've been with this company for 15 years. It's been awful. What you did. I've been waiting for someone to do that for a long, long time." "Thank you," Michael nodded, taking the glass. "It's just the beginning. Get some rest." He looked out the window at the dark expanse of the country. He had a long night ahead. But for the first time in a long time, he felt like he was flying in the right direction. When Michael landed at JFK, the sun was just beginning to stain the sky, a pale, watery pink. He hadn't slept. He had spent the entire flight on the satellite phone and the plane's Wi-Fi, coordinating with David Chen. He walked off the plane, not to an empty terminal, but to a phalanx of news reporters. Apparently, his private charter's arrival was the biggest news in the city. He didn't hide. He didn't cover his face. He walked straight to the cameras. "Mr. Thorne, is it true you grounded the airline because you were denied a seat? Mr. Thorne, how do you respond to accusations of corporate overreach? Is Velocity Air bankrupt?" Michael held up a hand. The chaotic scrum of reporters fell silent. "My name is Michael Thorne," he said, his voice raw from the dry cabin air and the non-stop calls. "Last night I was a customer, and I was treated with disrespect. I was profiled, and I was publicly humiliated by an employee who believed she was the face of the company." He leaned into the microphones. She was right. She was the face of the old Velocity Air. Today, I am the face of the new one. Last night, I initiated a fleet-wide grounding, not out of anger, but out of necessity. It was a full systems and ethics audit. We found the bug, and we fixed it. What about the stock price, Mr. Thorne? Your investors have lost millions. "I am the largest investor," Michael said flatly, "and I've never been more confident. We are refunding every single passenger. We are rebooking them on our competitors. We are paying for their hotels and their meals. We lost money, yes, but we are gaining trust. We are gaining a new reputation. As of today, the new bottom line at Velocity Air isn't just about profit. It's about respect. That's the new policy. That's the new brand. Respect. Non-negotiable." He tapped the podium. "I have a merger to attend. Excuse me." He walked away, leaving a stunned and silent press pool behind him. The story dominated the news for a week. The LAX takedown, they called it. The CEO's justice. Olivia Reynolds and Chad Wilkinson became national laughingstocks, the faces of instant karma. The old board of Velocity Air was gone. The new board, hand-picked by Michael, was diversified, included consumer advocates, and even the new captain, Sarah Jenkins, who was given a VP role in charge of culture and crew. Michael Thorne's merger went through, creating the largest sustainable energy and transport company in the world. And the first thing he did, he folded Velocity Air into the new company, renaming it Helios Airways. He painted the planes green and silver. He installed the best Wi-Fi, gave the best snacks, and paid his staff the highest wages in the industry. And on the inaugural flight from LAX to JFK, he was on board. An employee, a new gate agent, smiled at him as he scanned his pass. "Welcome aboard, Mr. Thorne. You're in 1A. "Thank you," Michael said, smiling back. "It's good to be home." He sat down, buckled his seatbelt, and closed his eyes. The flight was full. The company was sound. The message had been sent. And this time, he knew he would get to sleep. And that, folks, is what you call real-life karma, served at 35,000 feet. Olivia Reynolds learned the hard way that the person you judge by their hoodie might just be the person who signs your paycheck, or in her case, your termination papers. Michael Thorne didn't just get his seat. He reset an entire company, grounding an airline to prove that respect isn't optional. It's the bottom line. What did you think of Olivia's downfall? What would you have done in Michael's situation? Let us know your thoughts in the comments below. We read every single one. If you love stories where the arrogant get exactly what they deserve, and you believe that karma is always watching, do us a huge favor. Hit that like button. Share this video with a friend who needs to see it. And most importantly, click that subscribe button and ring the bell. You don't want to miss the next story. Thanks for watching, and we'll see you in the next one. The air inside the first-class cabin of Regal Horizon Flight 902 was pressurized and chilled, yet the glare Preston Montgomery shot at the teenager in seat 1A burned hotter than jet fuel. He didn't see a 17-year-old boy with headphones. He saw an error, a glitch in his exclusive platinum status world. When the senior flight attendant reached for the boy's wrist to physically remove him, she thought she was simply taking out the trash. She had no idea she was laying hands on the son of the woman who owned the very tarmac they were parked on. This isn't just a story about a stolen seat. It's about the catastrophe that follows when prejudice collides with absolute power. JFK. Airport was a chaotic symphony of rolling luggage, frantic announcements, and the distinct hurried rhythm of New York City. But inside the hull of the Boeing 777, designated for Regal Horizon Airlines, the world was silent and smelling of expensive leather and champagne. Jordan Banks adjusted the noise-canceling headphones over his ears, drowning out the low hum of the auxiliary power unit. At 17, Jordan had the kind of lanky, growing-too-fast build that made him slouch slightly to fit into spaces, but in seat 1A, a lie-flat pod with a privacy partition, he finally had room to stretch. He pulled the hood of his charcoal gray sweatshirt up over his head. It was a comfortable, oversized garment from a university gift shop, worn soft at the elbows. To the casual observer, he looked like any other teenager trying to disappear into his music. To the man currently boarding the aircraft, however, Jordan looked like a stain on a silk sheet. Preston Montgomery adjusted the cuffs of his bespoke Italian suit as he stepped onto the plane. Preston was a man who wore his net worth like armor. He was 45, with silvering hair carefully gelled back, and a jawline that seemed permanently set in a clench of dissatisfaction. He held a platinum medallion status card in his hand, though he didn't need to show it. He expected the crew to know him by scent. "Good afternoon, Mr. Montgomery." The flight attendant at the door chirped her smile tight and practiced. "Welcome back to Regal Horizon. Seat 2A as usual. 2A. Preston stopped, his brow furrowing. "I specifically requested the bulkhead. 1A. I need the extra legroom for my briefcase setup." "I apologize, sir," the attendant said, glancing at her manifest. 1A was booked 3 weeks ago. The cabin is full today." Preston didn't respond. He simply brushed past her, marching into the first-class cabin with the entitlement of a man who had never been told no without firing someone shortly after. He stopped abruptly at the first row. There in the seat he considered his birthright was Jordan. Jordan had his eyes closed, head bobbing slightly to a bass line only he could hear. His sneakers a rare vintage pair of Jordans that cost more than a mid-size sedan were scuffed at the toe. His backpack was shoved haphazardly into the corner. Preston stared. He looked at the boy's dark skin, the hooded sweatshirt, the relaxed posture that screamed loitering rather than lounging to Preston's biased eyes. The narrative in Preston's head wrote itself instantly. Affirmative action upgrade. Employee non-rev ticket. Lucky lottery winner. "Excuse me," Preston said, his voice loud enough to cut through the ambient noise of the cabin. Jordan didn't move. The noise cancellation was excellent. Preston's face flushed a dangerous shade of crimson. He leaned in, snapping his fingers directly in front of Jordan's face. "Hey, kid." Jordan flinched, his eyes snapping open. He pulled the headphones down around his neck, looking up with a mixture of confusion and teenage grogginess. Yeah. Can I help you? You're in my seat," Preston lied smoothly. It was a power move he'd used before. Confusion usually led to compliance. Jordan frowned, reaching into his pocket to pull out his boarding pass. He checked it, then looked back at the small brass placard on the suite wall. 1A. No, I think this is me. My ticket says 1A. Let me see that, Preston demanded, extending a hand. He didn't wait for permission. He snatched the fragile slip of paper from Jordan's grip. He scanned it. Jordan Banks, JFK to LHR, seat 1A. The ticket was valid. But to Preston, it felt fraudulent. It didn't make sense. Kids didn't sit in international first class unless they were wearing blazers and accompanied by a nanny or a parent. This kid was alone, looking like he'd just walked off a basketball court in Queens. "Where are your parents?" Preston asked, dropping the ticket onto the boy's lap with a sneer. "They're around," Jordan said, his voice guarding a secret. "Look, man, I'm just trying to sleep before we take off. Can you chill?" Chill. The word grated on Preston's nerves like sandpaper. "Don't speak to me like that," Preston snapped. He turned around, scanning the aisle for an ally. He found one in Brenda Gables. Brenda was the purser, the head flight attendant for the flight. She had been flying for 30 years and had developed a radar for trouble. Unfortunately, her radar was calibrated by decades of subtle prejudice and a desire to keep her high-tipping frequent flyers happy. She saw Preston Montgomery standing over a hooded teenager, and she immediately categorized the scene: valued customer versus disturbance. "Is there a problem here, Mr. Montgomery?" Brenda asked, rushing forward, her heels clicking sharply on the galley floor. "There is a massive problem, Brenda," Preston said, gesturing at Jordan as if presenting a dead rat. "I booked this seat. I always sit in 1A, and somehow this individual is occupying it. I suspect there's been a system error, or perhaps a security breach." Brenda looked at Jordan. She saw the hoodie. She saw the lack of eye contact. Jordan was looking out the window now, trying to ignore the man berating him. She made a snap judgment. "Sir," Brenda said, addressing Jordan with a tone that was technically polite, but dripped with ice. "May I see your boarding pass, please?" Jordan sighed, picking the ticket up from his lap again. "I just showed him. It's 1A. Brenda took the ticket. She examined it under the light. It looked real. But in her mind, she was already running through scenarios. Maybe he printed a fake one. Maybe he swapped with someone. It was unheard of for a teenager to be flying solo in a $10,000 suite without a VIP protocol note on her manifest. She checked her tablet. Seat 1A Banks, J. No status listed. No VIP tag. Just a name. "Mr. Banks," Brenda said, her voice lowering to a conspiratorial whisper meant to save face for him before she kicked him out. "How did you acquire this ticket?" Jordan looked at her, genuinely baffled. "My mom gave it to me." Preston let out a sharp, cruel laugh. "His mom? Did she use her miles from cleaning houses? Or did she find it on the floor?" The air in the cabin shifted. Several passengers in rows 2 and 3, a tech CEO named David, and a fashion editor named Chloe looked up from their screens, sensing the tension. They stayed silent, the bystander effect holding them in their luxury seats. Jordan's jaw tightened. The comment about his mother hit a nerve. He sat up straighter, his eyes hardening. "Watch your mouth." "Excuse me," Brenda interjected, stepping between them but facing Jordan. "You will not threaten other passengers on this aircraft." "He just insulted my mother," Jordan said, his voice rising slightly. "And I have a valid ticket. Why are you grilling me? Ask him for his ticket." Brenda bristled. "Mr. Montgomery is a global services member. I know who he is." "I don't know who you are, young man. And quite frankly, your behavior is becoming aggressive." "Aggressive?" Jordan laughed, a harsh, incredulous sound. "I'm sitting down. He's the one standing over me screaming." "I am not screaming," Preston said calmly, adjusting his tie. "I am demanding that Regal Horizon maintain its standards. I paid $12,000 for a premium experience. I did not pay to sit next to a delinquent who probably snuck in during the pre-boarding chaos." Preston turned to Brenda, his voice dropping to a dangerous ultimatum. "Brenda, I want him moved. Put him in economy where he belongs, or I'm calling the CEO. I played golf with the VP of operations last week. Do you want me to mention your name?" Brenda paled. She was 3 years away from retirement. She needed her pension. She looked at Jordan, a nobody in a hoodie. Then she looked at Preston, a man who could ruin her career with a single email. The choice to her was obvious. "Sir," Brenda said to Jordan, her voice stealing, "I'm going to have to ask you to gather your things." Jordan stared at her. "You're joking, right? I have a ticket." "We have a situation of overbooking and seat duplication," Brenda lied, improvising rapidly. "And since Mr. Montgomery is a priority status member, he has the right to the seat. I can find you something in economy comfort." "I'm not moving," Jordan said firmly. "My mom is boarding soon. You can talk to her." "We don't have time to wait for your mother," Brenda snapped, checking her watch. "The doors close in 10 minutes. If you don't move voluntarily, I will have to classify this as a refusal to comply with crew instructions. That is a federal offense." "You're kicking me out because I'm black and he's rich," Jordan said plainly. He didn't shout it. He stated it as a fact. "Don't play the race card with me," Preston spat. "It's about class, and you clearly have none." "That is enough," Brenda commanded. She reached into her pocket and pulled out a small radio. "Captain, this is the cabin. We have a non-compliant passenger in 1A. I might need security at the gate." Jordan's eyes went wide. He wasn't scared of the flight attendant, but the threat of security police was different. He knew how these interactions ended for boys who looked like him. He pulled his phone out, his thumbs flying across the screen. "Mom, 911. They are trying to kick me off the plane." Row 1. He hit send. The message delivered just as Brenda reached out and grabbed his backpack strap. "Don't touch my stuff," Jordan said, yanking it back. "Then move," Brenda shouted, losing her professional veneer entirely. "Get up now. Make me," Jordan challenged, crossing his arms. Preston leaned down his face, inches from Jordan's ear. "You're going to regret this, boy. You're going to leave this airport in handcuffs, and I'm going to enjoy my champagne in your seat while you sit in a holding cell." "Mr. Montgomery, please take your seat in 2A for a moment while I handle this," Brenda said, trying to regain control. "I'm calling the gate agent." As Preston smirked and settled into the seat behind Jordan, stretching his legs aggressively into the gap, Jordan saw the 3 dots appear on his phone screen. His mother was typing. Then a text came through. "Don't move. I'm at the jet bridge." Jordan took a deep breath. He looked at Brenda, who was angrily whispering into the flight interphone, and then at Preston, who was already opening a magazine, acting as if the war was won. "You really shouldn't have done this," Jordan said softly. Preston didn't even look up. "Save it for the public defender, kid." Jordan sat back, his heart hammering against his ribs. He turned up his noise-canceling headphones not to listen to music, but to dampen the sound of the storm that was about to break. He watched the front door of the plane. The first twist of this knife was about to happen, but nobody in the cabin, least of all Brenda Gables or Preston Montgomery, knew who was walking down that jet bridge. They thought they were dealing with an unruly teen mom. They were expecting a woman who would beg or scream or make a scene they could mock. They weren't expecting the hurricane in Dior heels. The atmosphere inside the cabin had shifted from awkward tension to a suffocating, static-charged dread. The luxury of the first-class cabin, the scent of warm nuts, the soft, ambient lighting, the hushed tones of wealth, clashed violently with the raw, ugly reality unfolding in row 1. Brenda Gables stood by the galley partition, her arms crossed tight against her chest, her face a mask of self-righteous indignation. She had committed to a narrative. Now the boy was a threat. To back down would be to admit a mistake, and Brenda Gables did not make mistakes. Not in front of Platinum members like Preston Montgomery. Captain Miller emerged from the cockpit, ducking his head slightly under the doorframe. He was a man of few words, exuding the weary authority of a pilot who just wanted to push back from the gate and beat the incoming weather over the Atlantic. "What is the issue, Brenda?" Miller asked, his voice low, scanning the scene. "Disruptive passenger captain," Brenda said, pointing a manicured finger at Jordan. "Refusal to comply with crew instructions, verbal aggression, and he is occupying Mr. Montgomery's seat without authorization." Miller looked at Jordan. He saw a kid in a hoodie, slouching, clutching a phone. He looked at Preston, who was sitting upright, radiating the kind of litigious energy that airlines feared most. "Son," Miller said, stepping into the aisle, "I need you to grab your bag and step off the aircraft. We can sort this out at the podium." "I have a ticket," Jordan said, his voice shaking slightly. The adrenaline was starting to curdle into fear. "Why won't anyone look at my ticket?" "We've seen it," Preston interjected smoothly from behind. "It's clearly fraudulent. Or stolen. Captain, I've been flying this airline for 20 years. I have never seen security this lax. I feel unsafe." Unsafe. It was the magic word. In the post-9/11 world of aviation, unsafe was a kill switch for all logic and negotiation. Miller sighed. He didn't have time to be a detective. "Okay, Brenda, call Port Authority. I want him removed. Now." Jordan's thumbs hovered over his phone screen. "Where are you?" "Mom." 10 minutes later, the heavy thud of boots on the jet bridge echoed through the silence of the cabin. 2 Port Authority officers squeezed through the boarding door. One was older, with a thick mustache and a name tag that read O'Malley. The other was younger Diaz, looking nervous, but eager to assert control. "Who's the problem?" O'Malley asked, his hand resting casually, terrifyingly on his belt. "Row 1, Brenda said, stepping aside like a matador opening the gate for a bull. "He refuses to leave." The officers marched down the short aisle. The space was cramped. To get to Jordan, they had to loom over him, blocking out the light. "Let's go, kid," O'Malley grunted. "Don't make this hard." Jordan held up his hands, palms open. "I'm not doing anything. I paid for this seat. I'm waiting for my mother." "You're trespassing on a federal aircraft once the captain tells you to leave," O'Malley said. He didn't wait for a response. He reached out and grabbed Jordan's upper arm. The grip was tight, bruising. Jordan flinched, pulling his arm back instinctively. "Don't touch me." "Resisting!" Diaz shouted, escalating the situation from 0 to 100 in a heartbeat. The 2 officers lunged. In the confined space of the first-class suite, it was a mess of limbs and shouting. They yanked Jordan out of the seat. His headphones clattered to the floor. His backpack was kicked aside. "I'm not resisting. I am not resisting," Jordan cried out, panic rising in his throat. He knew the script. He knew that if he moved the wrong way, he could die. He went limp, letting them drag him into the aisle. "Get him off my plane!" Preston yelled, standing up to get a better view. He had his phone out now, recording the incident. Look at him, fighting animal. Sir, sit down. Diaz barked at Preston, but he didn't stop dragging Jordan. They slammed Jordan against the bulkhead wall near the galley. O'Malley twisted Jordan's arm behind his back, forcing his wrist up toward his shoulder blades. The pain was sharp and blinding. You have the right to remain silent. O'Malley droned, the metal cuffs clicking ominously. Please, Jordan gasped, his face pressed against the plastic wall paneling. Check the manifest, please. Shut up, Brenda said, leaning in. You had your chance to leave quietly. Now you're going to jail. From the third row, the fashion editor, Chloe, stood up. Hey, that's a child. You're hurting him. Sit down, ma'am, or you're coming off too, O'Malley shouted back. The cabin was in chaos. The illusion of civilized luxury had shattered. Jordan felt the cold steel of the handcuffs bite into his wrists. Tears stung his eyes, not from pain, but from the humiliation. He was being treated like a criminal in front of 50 people, all because a man in a suit decided he didn't belong. Preston Montgomery was smiling. It was a small, tight smile of victory. He watched as the officers began to march Jordan toward the door. That's what happens, Preston muttered to the empty air loud enough for the nearby passengers to hear. Order is restored. As they reached the aircraft door, Jordan looked down the jet bridge. It was empty. His heart sank. She hadn't made it. He was on his own. Move it, O'Malley shoved him forward. But just as Jordan's sneaker crossed the threshold from the plane to the bridge, a shadow fell over the entryway. The click-clack of heavy, purposeful footsteps stopped everyone cold. It wasn't the frantic run of a late passenger. It was the rhythmic, terrifyingly calm stride of someone who owned the ground she walked on. The woman blocking the exit of the jet bridge stood 5'10" in heels, but she filled the space like a monolith. Cassandra Banks was a vision of intimidating elegance. She wore a cream-colored pantsuit that cost more than the annual salary of everyone in the flight crew combined. Her hair was pulled back in a severe, flawless bun. Her sunglasses were perched on her head, revealing eyes that were currently burning with a cold, nuclear fury. She didn't look at the police officers. She didn't look at Brenda. She looked directly at Jordan, taking in the handcuffs, the tear tracks on his face, the way his shoulder was hunched from the officer's grip. The air pressure in the jet bridge seemed to drop. Take your hands off my son, she said. Her voice wasn't loud. It didn't need to be. It had the timbre of a gavel striking a sounding block. Officer O'Malley blinked, caught off guard. He was used to screaming mothers. He wasn't used to this. Ma'am, step aside. This individual is under arrest for trespassing and resisting. I said, Cassandra interrupted, stepping forward, forcing the officers to take a step back into the plane. Take your hands off him, immediately. Brenda Gables rushed forward from the galley, sensing a new problem. Ma'am, you cannot block the boarding door. You need to clear the area or we will have you removed as well. Who are you? Cassandra finally shifted her gaze to Brenda. It was like a predator looking at prey that didn't yet know it was dead. Who am I? Cassandra repeated softly. She reached into her handbag, the officer's tensed hands drifting to their holsters. But she didn't pull out a weapon. She pulled out a black leather lanyard with a heavy metallic ID card encased in titanium. She held it up. It wasn't a standard crew ID. It wasn't a pilot's badge. It was a solid black card with the Regal Horizon logo embossed in actual gold leaf, followed by a single stripe of iridescent purple, the color reserved for the board of directors. I am Cassandra Banks, she enunciated every syllable. I am the majority shareholder of the Horizon Group, the parent company of this airline. And unless you want to be working the fry station at a fast food joint in Jersey by tomorrow morning, you will release my son." Silence. Absolute, terrified silence. Brenda's face drained of color so fast she looked like she might faint. She stared at the badge. She knew the legend of the black titanium clearance. It was rumored to exist, but most employees never saw one. It meant the holder outranked the CEO. Officer O'Malley looked at the badge, then at Brenda. "Is this real?" Brenda couldn't speak. She just nodded a jerky, panicked motion. "Uncuff him," Cassandra commanded. O'Malley fumbled for his keys. His hands were shaking. He unlocked the cuffs. Jordan rubbed his wrists, stepping quickly to his mother's side. Cassandra didn't hug him, not yet. She was in war mode. She placed a protective hand on his shoulder, turning her glare back to the group. "Now," Cassandra said, her voice dropping to a dangerously low register, "I want to know exactly why my 17-year-old son, who was traveling on a ticket issued personally by my office, is in handcuffs." Captain Miller, hearing the commotion, came back out of the cockpit. He saw the badge. He saw Cassandra. His eyes went wide. "Ms. Banks, we weren't informed you were flying today." "I wasn't," Cassandra said. "I came to drop off my son, but I received a distress text saying he was being assaulted by my own staff." "Assaulted?" Preston Montgomery's voice floated from the cabin. He hadn't seen the badge yet. He just heard a woman's voice and assumed the mother had finally arrived to beg. He stood up, adjusting his tie, walking toward the galley to witness the finale. "Lady, your son is a delinquent who stole a first-class seat," Preston sneered, stepping into the galley. "He assaulted the crew with his attitude. I suggest you take him and leave before I add you to my lawsuit." Cassandra looked past the captain, past the trembling flight attendant, and locked eyes with Preston. "And who might you be?" she asked. "Preston Montgomery." He puffed out his chest. "Platinum medallion. I practically pay the salaries of these people." Cassandra let out a short, dry laugh. It was a terrifying sound. "Mr. Montgomery," she said, stepping into the cabin, pulling Jordan with her. The police officers scrambled out of her way, pressing themselves against the wall. "You generate 0.0003% of this airline's revenue. I checked your file on my way over here. You buy discounted business class fares and upgrade using miles. You are not a customer. You are a liability." Preston's mouth fell open. "Excuse me?" "You demanded my son be removed from seat 1A. Cassandra continued, walking closer to him. "Seat 1A, which I reserved for him because it is his birthday. You racially profiled a child, bullied a spineless crew into doing your dirty work, and wasted airport security resources." She turned to Brenda. "And you?" Brenda flinched. "Ms. Banks, Mr. Montgomery insisted. He said he felt unsafe." "Unsafe?" Cassandra raised an eyebrow. "Because a boy was wearing a hoodie. Did you verify his ticket?" I thought it was fake," Brenda stammered. "The system didn't show a VIP status." "Because I blocked the status so he could travel like a normal person," Cassandra snapped. "I wanted him to have a quiet flight. Instead, you showed him exactly what this company looks like underneath the marketing." Cassandra pulled out her phone. She didn't dial a number. She opened the internal executive app that controlled the airline's operations. "Captain Miller," Cassandra said, not looking up from her screen. "Yes, ma'am." the captain said, standing at attention. "Is this aircraft ready to fly?" "Yes, ma'am. We are fully fueled and catered." "Good," Cassandra said. She tapped her screen. "I am grounding this flight." A collective gasp went through the cabin. "Grounding it!" Preston shouted. "You can't do that. I have a meeting in London." "I can do whatever I want, Mr. Montgomery. I own the plane," Cassandra said calmly. "But I'm not grounding it for mechanical reasons. I'm grounding it for a personnel change." She looked at Brenda, then at the captain. "Captain, you are relieved of duty pending an investigation into your failure to protect a passenger," Cassandra said. "Brenda Gables, you are fired. Effective immediately. Retrieve your personal items and leave the aircraft." Brenda burst into tears. "Miss Banks, please? I have 30 years. I'm 3 years from my pension." "You should have thought about that before you put my son in handcuffs to please a bigot," Cassandra said, her voice devoid of sympathy. "Get off my plane." She turned to the police officers. "And you two, I suggest you file a report stating that this was a misunderstanding caused by the crew. Because if I see resisting arrest on my son's record, I will sue the Port Authority until the state of New York runs out of ink printing the settlement checks. Am I clear?" "Crystal clear, ma'am," Officer O'Malley said, sweating profusely. "Come on, Diaz. We're done here." The police retreated. Brenda, sobbing hysterically, grabbed her purse and ran off the plane. Captain Miller hung his head, gathered his flight bag, and walked past them looking like a broken man. The cabin was silent. Jordan looked at his mother, awe written all over his face. He had seen her work before, but never like this. Never for him. "Now," Cassandra said, turning back to Preston Montgomery, who was now pale and trembling, realizing the magnitude of his error. What about me?" Preston stammered. I didn't know who he was. It was an honest mistake." Cassandra smiled. It was the smile of a shark sensing blood in the water. "Oh, we're just getting started with you, Preston." The silence in the first-class cabin was heavy, the kind of silence that usually follows a gunshot. But in this case, the weapon had been a black titanium ID card and a few softly spoken sentences. Preston Montgomery, a man who had spent the last 45 minutes expanding his chest and barking orders like a field marshal, now looked incredibly small. He was standing in the aisle, trapped between the imposing figure of Cassandra Banks and the row of seats filled with passengers who were no longer looking at their phones. They were watching him. "You said you were just getting started." Preston said, his voice cracking slightly. He tried to clear his throat to summon the arrogance that usually fueled him, but the tank was empty. "Look, Ms. Banks, surely we can come to an arrangement. I'm a businessman. I understand stress. I'm willing to overlook the theatrical nature of this misunderstanding." "Theatrical," Cassandra repeated, tilting her head. She took a step closer to him. The scent of her perfume, expensive, subtle, and sharp, wafted over him. "You called the police on a child. You called him a delinquent. You had him put in handcuffs because you wanted legroom." She looked down at the tablet in her hand. Her fingers moved with lethal precision. "Preston James Montgomery," she read aloud. "Account number 8890 Alpha Bravo. CEO of Montgomery Logistics, a mid-sized shipping coordinator in Delaware." Preston stiffened. "That is private information." "Not when it's in my database," Cassandra countered. "I see here you have accrued 450,000 miles. You're saving them for a family trip to Fiji next year, a second honeymoon." Preston's eyes widened. "How do you know that?" "Notes from our customer service line," Cassandra said breezily. You apparently called 3 times to shout at an agent about blackout dates. You have a history of verbal abuse toward my staff, Mr. Montgomery. 14 documented incidents in 3 years. Usually we tolerate it because the customer is always right. But today, she tapped the screen once firmly. What did you do? Preston asked, a cold sweat breaking out on his forehead. I just deleted them, Cassandra said, showing him the screen. All 450,000 miles. Gone. You can't do that, Preston shrieked, his face turning purple. That's theft. That's $40,000 worth of travel. Read the Terms and Conditions Section 9, Clause C, Cassandra recited from memory. Regal Horizon reserves the right to terminate any account and forfeit all accrued benefits if the member engages in conduct detrimental to the airline, its staff, or its passengers. She looked him dead in the eye. You are detrimental, Preston. I'll sue, Preston screamed. I'll sue you personally. Get in line, Cassandra said, bored. She tapped the screen again. I've also flagged your passport number in our Global Alliance system. You are hereby placed on the no-fly list for Regal Horizon and all our partner carriers. That includes British Airways, Iberia, and Qantas. Good luck getting to London. I hear the swim is invigorating this time of year. Preston looked around the cabin, desperate for an ally. He looked at David, the tech CEO, in 2A. Are you going to let her do this? She's a tyrant. This is corporate overreach. David, who had been watching the entire exchange with a mixture of shock and awe, slowly picked up his noise-canceling headphones. He looked Preston in the eye, gave a small, dismissive shrug, and put the headphones back on. Preston turned to Chloe, the fashion editor in 3A. You saw it. The kid was aggressive. Chloe didn't speak. She just held up her phone. The camera lens was pointed directly at Preston. The red REC dot was blinking. Smile, Preston, Chloe said icily. You're going to be famous. Preston lunged toward her. Delete that. Cassandra moved faster than anyone expected. She stepped in front of Preston, blocking his path to Chloe. She didn't touch him, but her presence was a wall. If you touch another passenger, Cassandra whispered, I will not call the police. I will call my private security team, and they don't carry handcuffs. They carry non-disclosure agreements and very heavy flashlights. Preston froze. He realized finally that he had lost. The cabin was a hostile environment. The air was thin. His status was 0. Get your bag, Cassandra ordered. Preston reached up to the overhead bin with trembling hands. He pulled down his leather carry-on. He looked at seat 1A, the seat he had fought for, the seat that had cost him everything. Jordan was standing there, rubbing his wrists. He didn't look triumphant. He just looked tired. Preston started looking at the boy. Maybe he thought an apology would save his miles. Maybe he thought he could beg. Don't, Jordan said quietly. Just go. Gate agents are waiting for you at the top of the jet bridge to escort you out of the terminal, Cassandra said. Do not stop at the food court. Do not stop at the restroom. Leave my airport. Preston Montgomery adjusted his suit jacket, trying to salvage a shred of dignity. He lifted his chin, turned on his heel, and began the long walk down the aisle. It was the longest walk of his life. First class was silent, but as he passed through the curtain into business class, and then past the galley toward the exit, a low sound started. It was a slow clap. It started from a flight attendant in the back who had heard the commotion. Then a passenger joined in. Then another. By the time Preston reached the aircraft door, the sound of applause was ringing in his ears. They weren't clapping for him. They were clapping for his departure. He stepped onto the jet bridge into the waiting arms of two stern-looking gate agents and disappeared from the world of the elite forever. Inside the cabin, Cassandra let out a long breath. Her shoulders slumped just a fraction of an inch, the only sign that the confrontation had cost her anything. She turned to the cabin. "Ladies and gentlemen, I apologize for the delay and the disruption. A fresh crew is on their way. We will have you in the air in 45 minutes. As compensation for this ordeal, every passenger on this flight will receive a voucher for a future round-trip ticket anywhere we fly. On the house." The tension in the cabin evaporated instantly. Smiles returned. The tech CEO gave a thumbs up. Cassandra turned to Jordan. The steel in her eyes melted away, replaced by a fierce, painful love. "Are you okay?" she asked, reaching out to touch his face. Jordan leaned into her hand, closing his eyes. "Yeah, I'm okay. Thanks, Mom." "I'm sorry," she whispered. "I tried to keep my world away from you. I thought if I just bought the ticket and didn't put my name on the reservation, you could just be normal." "I can't be normal here, Mom," Jordan said, looking at the empty seat where Preston had sat. "Not when people like him are the gatekeepers." "Then we change the gatekeepers," Cassandra said firmly. She guided him back to seat 1A. "Sit. I'm going to stay with you until the new captain arrives. Then I have to go deal with the legal fallout of firing a union crew mid-shift." "You're not coming?" Jordan asked, a flash of disappointment in his eyes. "I can't," she said. "I have a board meeting in New York that I was already late for. But," when she smiled, "I think you'll be safe now. I've put a note on the manifest." "What does it say?" "It says, son of the boss. If he asks for a soda, give him the whole can." Jordan laughed. It was a weak laugh, but it was real. Cassandra kissed his forehead, straightened her blazer, and turned to leave. But she stopped at row 3A. "Ms. Chloe," Cassandra said to the fashion editor. Chloe looked up, slightly startled. "Yes, Ms. Banks." "That video," Cassandra said. "The one you recorded." "I can delete it," Chloe said quickly. "I didn't mean to pry." "No," Cassandra said, a dark smile playing on her lips. "Don't delete it. Upload it. Post it everywhere. Tag him. Tag the airline. Tag me." Chloe grinned, her thumbs already moving over the screen. "With pleasure." The flight to London was uneventful, but only in the sense that the plane stayed in the air. Inside Jordan's mind, and on the ground below, a storm was brewing that made the earlier confrontation look like a light drizzle. The new crew was terrifyingly attentive. The new purser, a man named Timothy, treated Jordan like he was made of spun glass. He brought sparkling water before Jordan could even ask. He offered extra pillows, 3 different meal options, and checked on him every 15 minutes. Jordan sat in 1A, staring out the window at the clouds over the Atlantic. The physical cuffs were gone, but he could still feel the phantom weight of them on his wrists. He replayed the moment over and over, Preston's sneer, the officer's grip, the feeling of absolute powerlessness. He realized something profound at 35,000 feet. His mother's money could save him, but it couldn't hide him. Without the badge, without the title, he was just a target. He pulled out his phone. He had paid for the in-flight Wi-Fi. He opened Twitter X. The first thing he saw on the trending tab was hashtag #first-class-racist. He clicked it. The video Chloe had recorded was already at 4 million views. It was a masterclass in shaky cam justice. It started mid-argument, capturing Preston screaming, "I practically pay the salaries of these people," and ended with Cassandra's icy demolition of his miles and the applause as he walked off. The comments were a waterfall of fury and vindication. At Fly High 9. Did she just delete his miles in real time? OMG, the power move. Queen. At Justice for Jordan. Imagine being so racist you lose your frequent flyer status and your dignity in 5 minutes. Karma is swift. At Tech Bro Dave. I was on this flight. The guy was a nightmare. The kid was just chilling. The mom is Cassandra Banks. She owns the airline. Dude picked a fight with God. Jordan scrolled, feeling a strange mixture of validation and anxiety. His face was blurred in the video. Chloe had been respectful enough to focus on Preston, but everyone knew who his mother was now. Meanwhile, on the ground in New York, the fallout was hitting Preston Montgomery with the force of a freight train. Preston was sitting in the back of an Uber stuck in traffic on the Van Wyck Expressway. He had been escorted out of the terminal by security like a common criminal. He was trying to rebook a flight on his phone, but every app was giving him errors. Expedia booking failed. British Airways, user restricted. Delta transaction declined. Damn it! He slammed his phone against his knee. His phone rang. It was his office line. Montgomery Logistics, this is Preston, he barked. Preston, it's Sarah. His assistant's voice was trembling. Preston, what is happening? The phones haven't stopped ringing for 20 minutes. What are you talking about? People are calling and screaming, Sarah said. They're canceling contracts. The Henderson account just pulled out. They said they don't do business with what, Sarah? With viral bigots. Preston, have you checked your email? Preston minimized the call and opened his email. His inbox was flooding. Hate mail, obviously, but worse notifications from his business partners. Subject, immediate termination of partnership. Subject, vendor review, urgent. Subject, LinkedIn account, flagged for review. He opened LinkedIn. His profile, which he had meticulously curated for a decade, was being bombarded. Someone had found the video. Someone had identified him. The internet sleuths had done in 1 hour what the police would take weeks to do. They had found his company, his public posts, his old tweets. His reputation wasn't just damaged, it was being nuked. Preston felt his chest tighten. He couldn't breathe. The walls of the Uber felt like they were closing in. He rolled down the window, gasping for air, the smell of exhaust fumes filling his lungs. Driver, Preston gasped. Turn around. Take me home. I can't turn around here, buddy, the driver said, looking in the rearview mirror. Then the driver squinted. He looked at his phone, which was mounted on the dashboard, playing a video on a news loop. He looked back at Preston. Hey, the driver said, his voice hardening. Wait a second. You're that guy, from the plane. Preston shrank back into the seat. Just drive. I saw that video, the driver said, slowing the car down. My nephew looks like that kid you tried to arrest. I didn't try to arrest anyone, Preston lied. Please just take me to Connecticut. The driver pulled the car over onto the shoulder of the highway. The hazard lights clicked on. Get out, the driver said. What? You can't leave me here. It's the highway. It's my car, the driver said, turning around. And I have the right to refuse service to anyone who makes me feel unsafe. Isn't that what you said? Preston stared at him, mouth agape. The words tasted like ash. Get out. Preston Montgomery, former Platinum Medallion member, former CEO of a functioning logistics company, opened the door. He stepped out onto the dirty shoulder of the Van Wyck Expressway. It began to rain. As the Uber sped away, splashing dirty puddle water onto his Italian suit, Preston realized the true power of the blacklist. It wasn't just about planes. It was about exile. Back in the sky, Jordan watched the sunset from seat 1A. The Wi-Fi pinged again. A new email from his mom. Subject: one more thing. Jordan, I know today was hard. I'm sorry. But I want you to know something. I didn't just fire Brenda and ban Preston to punish them. I did it to show you that you never have to accept less than what you deserve. You belong in first class. You belong in the boardroom. You belong wherever you want to be. P.S. I looked into Preston's business holdings. Horizon Group has a shipping contract with his firm for our cargo division. I just canceled it. It represented 60% of his annual revenue. Happy birthday. Love, Mom. Jordan smiled. He put his headphones back on. The bass kicked in. He reclined the seat all the way back, closed his eyes, and for the first time that day, he finally fell asleep. But the story wasn't over. The video had done more than destroy Preston. It had awoken something else. The viral nature of the incident had caught the attention of someone far more dangerous than a logistics manager in Delaware. Deep in the corporate offices of a rival airline, a man named Sterling Vance, CEO of Aero Global, was watching the clip on a loop. He didn't care about the racism. He didn't care about the boy. He cared about the ID card Cassandra had flashed. The black titanium clearance. She used the override protocol, Vance muttered to his VP. She exposed herself. So, the VP asked. So. Vance smiled, lighting a cigar. That card gives her absolute authority, but it also links her personally to every liability on that aircraft. If we can prove she abused her power to bypass federal security protocols, we can ground her entire airline, and the drama on Flight 902 was resolved, but the war for the skies was just beginning. While Jordan slept over the Atlantic, the ground beneath the bank's empire began to shake. Arthur Gould, CEO of Aero Global and Horizon's fiercest rival, saw the viral footage not as a justice piece, but as a weapon. She broke protocol, Gould murmured to his general counsel in Chicago, watching Cassandra flash the black titanium badge. She overrode federal officers. That's a national security violation. Leak it. Frame it as a billionaire playing by different rules. If we strip her license, I buy her routes for pennies. By the time Jordan's plane descended into Heathrow, the narrative had flipped. He turned on his phone, expecting victory. Instead, he found Hatchet Boycott, Horizon. Headlines screamed, Billionaire Tycoon Bypasses, Security, and FAA Launches Investigation. Jordan felt sick. He had just wanted a seat, but now he was watching his mother's legacy crumble. Meanwhile, in a dingy motel in Queens, a disgraced Preston Montgomery stared at the same news nursing cheap whiskey and a shattered ego. His phone rang. Mr. Montgomery, a smooth voice intoned. This is Arthur Gould. I believe we share a common enemy. Preston sat up. The woman who ruined me. I can help you get it all back, Gould promised. I'm launching a class action lawsuit. I need you to testify that you saw Cassandra Banks physically threaten the police, that she acted like a maniac. But she didn't, Preston hesitated. Do you want to live in this motel forever? Or do you want $10 million and a seat on my board? Preston looked at his stained cuffs. Survival outweighed truth. Tell me what to say. 2 days later, an emergency oversight hearing was set in Washington, D.C. If the Aviation Ethics Committee found Cassandra in violation of the Secure Skies Act, she would lose her operating license. In the Capitol holding room, Cassandra looked tired but resolute. Jordan sat beside her, adjusting a suit she'd bought him in London. "Mom," Jordan said quietly, "blame me. Tell them I was acting out. Don't lose the company for this." Cassandra turned her eyes blazing with fierce affection. "Jordan, look at me. This company is just planes and fuel. I would burn every jet in the hangar to the ground before I let a man like Preston Montgomery put chains on you again." "But Gould is going to win," Jordan insisted, showing her the news feed. "Preston is testifying that you assaulted the cops." Cassandra smiled, a cold, calculated expression of a grandmaster seeing a checkmate. "Arthur Gould is a smart man, but he forgot one thing." "What?" "He forgot who built the security system he uses on his own planes." The bailiff opened the door. "Ms. Banks, the committee is ready." The hearing room in D.C. was a pressure cooker of flashing cameras and murmuring press. Arthur Gould sat smugly beside a polished, rehearsed Preston Montgomery. Senator Higgins banged his gavel. "Ms. Banks, you are accused of utilizing unauthorized executive clearance to obstruct federal law enforcement. Mr. Gould alleges your actions on Flight 902 compromised national airspace safety." Gould stood, buttoning his jacket. "It's simple, Senator. Ms. Banks used her wealth to intimidate police. My witness, Mr. Montgomery, will testify that he was terrified for his life when she stormed the aircraft with a security detail." "Lies!" Preston shouted, emboldened by the cameras. "She had thugs. She threatened to kill me. She's a maniac." The room buzzed. The narrative was working. Cassandra looked like a tyrant. "Ms. Banks." Higgins peered over his glasses. "Do you have a defense?" Cassandra stood alone. She walked to the center of the room, placing a small silver flash drive on the podium. "Senator," she began, her voice calm. "Mr. Gould believes the black titanium badge is merely a status symbol. He is mistaken. The titanium level was designed after 9/11 as a mobile black box. When activated, it becomes a walking surveillance unit, encrypting high-fidelity audio and video directly to the cloud." Gould's face went ashen. "I have the recording of the entire interaction," Cassandra said. "But I have something even more interesting." She plugged in the drive. The screens flickered to life. First, the video showed the jet bridge Cassandra walking alone, calm and collected, contrasting sharply with Preston's screamed racial slurs. The room fell silent, but Cassandra wasn't finished. "That clears the assault charge. Now here is the audio from yesterday." The screen went black, but the audio was crystal clear, the ambient noise of a restaurant. Gould's voice. "Preston, you need to lie. Say she hit the officer." Preston's voice. "But she didn't." Gould's voice. "I don't care. I'm paying you $10 million to bury her. Once she loses her license, Aero Global buys her routes for pennies." Senator Higgins turned slowly to Gould, his face red with fury. "Mr. Gould, did you just conspire to commit perjury before a congressional committee?" Gould knocked his chair over, panicking. "That recording is illegal, wiretapping. It's a federal security device authorized by the FAA." Cassandra cut in a sharp smile, playing on her lips. "You signed the bill that made my badge legal 3 years ago, Arthur. You built the trap yourself." As Capitol Police moved in, handcuffing a sobbing Preston and a stunned Gould, The room erupted. Cassandra turned back to Jordan, who was watching the Horizon stock price rocket upward on his tablet. "How did you get that audio?" Jordan whispered. "You weren't near them yesterday." "Brenda Gables was," Cassandra winked. "She begged for her job back. I told her if she wore a wire to her meeting with Gould, I'd let her keep her pension." 6 months later, JFK Airport was bustling. Jordan Banks walked through the terminal, not in a hoodie, but in the crisp uniform of a Horizon Flight Academy cadet. He stopped at the gate for Flight 902. The agent smiled. "Seat 1A, Mr. Banks. Enjoy." Jordan took the ticket, but paused. Near the counter stood a teenager, maybe 16, clutching a standby slip and looking anxiously at the floor, the universal look of someone who felt they didn't belong. Jordan walked over. "Flying standby." The kid nodded nervously. "Hoping for a seat in the back." Jordan looked at his first-class ticket, then at the boy. He remembered the feeling of being small-judged and unwanted. "Here," Jordan said, swapping his ticket with the kid's slip. "What, no, this is first class." "Take it." Jordan smiled, adjusting his cap. "If anyone asks if you belong there, tell them you own the seat." As the kid walked toward the front of the plane in disbelief, Jordan headed for the back, whistling. He didn't need 1A to feel important anymore. He knew that real power wasn't in the seat you sat in, but in the hand you extended to pull others up. The story of Jordan and Cassandra Banks serves as a powerful reminder that prejudice is fragile when faced with truth. Preston Montgomery and Arthur Gould thought their status could crush a boy, but they underestimated a mother's ferocious love. In the end, the black titanium badge wasn't the hero, it was merely the tool that exposed the rot beneath the expensive suits. Justice wasn't just served, it was delivered first class. If you enjoyed this story of justice and karma, please destroy that like button. Share this with someone who needs a reminder to stand up for themselves, and don't forget to subscribe. Thanks for watching, Brian. A check lai title file Lu Ko Jung title can viet.